Regina Lawless is an author. She is a leadership coach. She is the former head of DEI at Instagram, and she is the founder and CEO of Bossy and Blissful. Her newest book is Do You? A Journey of Success, Loss, and Learning to Live a More Meaningful Life. Welcome to the show, Regina.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excited to have you on. Tell us a little about your personal life, some more about your work, and what motivated you to put pen to paper for the book.
Absolutely. Wow. So personal life, I am in a new phase of life right now. I've left my corporate job, so I'm in this phase of kind of figuring out a new routine for myself. Having gone from having all of the structure of kind of a 9 to 5, or even though it was much more than that. So I've been learning over the last 7, 8 months how to readjust my routine. I'm in a new phase of parenting. I have a 18-year-old. He just started his first semester in college. So that has been different for me personally. And I moved into a new house too, in a new neighborhood. So a lot has happened for me in the last, I would say, 7, 8 months that I've been adjusting to. And then professionally, I've been building a business. So I launched Bossy and Blissful July of last year. So I have been doing a couple of events to get that community started and really build something restorative for high achieving women of color. And then my biggest focus right now professionally is the launch of my book, Do You? I feel like this is a book that I always knew I would write. I've always been an avid reader. I've always wanted to write a book. I just never knew what that book was going to be about. And then, unfortunately, through the tragic loss of my husband, that really became the catalyst for rediscovering myself. And, to answer your question, George, that really helped me put pen to paper on expressing all of the lessons that I learned over, roughly 18 months to 2 years of trial and error and healing from that loss.
Seismic shifts in your life.
A lot going on, George. Very seismic.
My goodness. Well, it's certainly not the bossy and blissful. I'm such an advocate and believer in
Thank
the
you.
power of community. Was that also something that you'd always want to put together, that you wanted to put together?
Yeah, I have always been I think, community builder. I've always been the type of person who brings other people together. I've always had a pretty wide, diverse circle of friends. And oftentimes I'm the linchpin that brings very different people, very different perspectives together. And so as I was thinking about what I wanted to build, I remember being oftentimes in my career, I was the only, whether it was the only woman on a leadership team, the only Black woman, or the only Black person. And that climb up the corporate ladder, leaders will tell you they have this saying for a reason. It's lonely on top. It's especially lonely when you're underrepresented. And so that's why is really important for me to build a community of high achieving Black women because we are so few and far between in leadership positions, and so um, it shouldn't have to be lonely. So I wanted to build this community so that we would have a safe space to talk about certain issues and let our hair down and just have fun.
Yeah, well, amen to all of that. So rediscovering yourself, I imagine, I think for me and for a lot of people that I've spoken to, a process like that leads to certainly reminding myself of things that I knew, but then also learning for the first time stuff about myself that maybe I just was unaware of.
Yeah, it was both for me actually. So, one of the things that I reminded myself of is how much I liked to do creative things that I had gotten away from. So, in the book, I write about rediscovering dance. So, I used to dance all the time. I was on a dance team in high school. And I had just gotten away from that. And during this discovery, it was around my birthday party. I decided to throw this lavish birthday party for myself, just to treat
Yeah.
myself. And I had come through some, kind of the kind of some of the hardest parts of the grief. And so I threw myself this birthday party and I hired backup dancers to to dance with
That's
me at
amazing.
my birthday. It was awesome. Okay. Like it was amazing. So things like that, I rediscovered that I'm actually a good dancer and I
Yeah.
love to dance. And then I discovered things about myself that I didn't know. Um, just how resilient, that had never really occurred to me. I've been through a lot of things in my life, but going through something like this, I was 40 when my husband passed away. Our son was 15. I had just started my job at Instagram, kind of as head of DEI, about 6 months prior to my husband passing. And so I didn't realize how resilient I really was. So I got to learn that about myself. Um, and just how much I value freedom and adventure. I didn't know that about myself. I knew that I liked to travel, but I got a chance to do a lot of travel, a lot of, both solo, some with friends, some with family. And I discovered that about myself, that I value that freedom and adventure. So that was new.
Yeah. That's certainly it's different stages or seasons of life. Certainly when you have kids and a big job and just it's easy to not focus on doing fun things and to think about my inner creative, which I rediscovered mine a couple of years ago also, and to travel on your own. Oh my goodness, what
Mhm.
a weird phenomenon that you would have thought that was crazy 5 years ago.
Yes. Yeah, and that was really strange for me because I had not traveled by myself. I was always with family, or it was a business trip. And so I guess technically you could say I've traveled by myself for work, but this was different to travel by myself for myself for leisure. And it gave me the space that I needed. That was actually one of the first things I did within that first 3 months of my husband passing. I took a solo trip up to Mendocino County, which is up in Northern California, amongst the redwoods, and just watched the ocean. And it really opened me up and started to allow me to process the grief. So it was a beautiful experience.
I appreciate that. So the subtitle of the book is Lost and Learning to Live a More Meaningful Life. What does meaningful mean?
Mm, I love that question. Meaningful for me means doing what lights me up, doing what I feel like I'm called to do or purposed to do. And I think you only arrive at that from tapping into your inner wisdom. Um, I discovered that I was on autopilot for so many years. I was striving to climb the corporate ladder. I have always been a very ambitious person. And once I set my sights on corporate leadership, there was no looking back. But in that, I had to do so much to get there, so much personal sacrifice, so much conforming, so much stress and overwhelm that I had gotten away from me at my essence. And I'd gotten away from that creativity, that lightness, that fun, that joy. Um, and so through this, it really took stripping such a major part of my life, the loss of my husband, to really strip me back down and come back to my true self. And that's where I discovered that at my core, I'm a person who loves people, and I love to acquire knowledge and share that knowledge with other people. And meaningful to me is when I'm able to do that, when I get to do speaking events, when I get to coach people, when I get to create community and be amongst people and share and break bread. So I think whatever that is for you as an individual, I always say, think back to what you enjoyed doing as a child. All the things that are meaningful to me now showed up in my childhood: the dancing, the music, the talking to people, the friendships. So oftentimes our childhood gives us cues and clues of what we find meaningful.
Isn't that the truth? We're just so busy living as kids, and then we make that shift into, for lack of a better term, survival as we're climbing the corporate ladder and wearing the clothes we're supposed to and doing the things we're supposed to and talking the way that we're whatever that is. And certainly people who are listening can identify with that phenomenon. Do you think without the experiences that you had, would you have arrived at that place, or would have just have been, I'm just inside the belly of the beast. I'm working inside this Fortune 500 company. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
I would have absolutely kept doing what I was doing. I needed that disruption. It's like the Matrix. Like I was I
Yeah.
needed to be taken outside of the Matrix to really see it for what it was. So I'm thankful. I actually don't regret any part of my experience because I do believe everything happened the way it was supposed to happen. And had it not been for the loss of my husband, I wouldn't be able to see it, kind of step back and see things more clearly and have the perspective that I now have. But yeah, without that, I would have continued the status quo.
I think in a lot of ways, you, getting older is this is it sounds so dumb. I think about people like Charles Barkley. He is an absolute national treasure because he says
Yes.
what's on his mind. And we universally love Charles Barkley. He's like, this
Yeah.
guy's amazing. And he's sort of always been that way. But I think to myself, well, why don't I just be myself and say what's on my mind, regardless of what I think that the impact is going to have on other people? You know what I'm talking about? Is that sort of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I do think you come more fuller into yourself with age. And I think that is also part of my journey. Um, I think now that I'm in this next phase of my life, I'm in my 40s now, the things that used to be so important to me, or the things I used to um I think worry about. Just I realize now after you've gone through cycles of things, you realize like, okay, these are just the ebbs and flows of life, you know. So that's one thing. I think you have enough, like you have a bigger data set, right, to pull from, and you know that you've been through some things before. You know if you've gotten through it before, you can get through it again. But also, yeah, I think something starts to happen where you just don't, I don't know if it's, I just don't even have the energy to care anymore as I've gotten older. Just like, it's just being more comfortable in my skin, that I am more comfortable saying and being and not conforming as much. Cause like, this is who I am and this is what you get, take it or leave it. But that, you don't have that perspective or that confidence in your 20s. I know I didn't. I was immensely concerned with what everybody thought about me in my 20s, and I'm not as concerned now.
Yeah, certainly the same for me. And yeah, getting older, you have less F's to give, and
Yeah.
you get a little bit of money. And not that,
Yeah.
not that I have Charles Barkley FU money necessarily, but is that is that one of the, for lack of a better term, again, an unlock that you're interested in helping people to get to quicker? You don't need to be 50 years old or whatever to be yourself. You don't need to be the CFO, whatever. And it doesn't, being you is not necessarily dependent on your position or your bank account, your age.
Yeah, it that is something that I absolutely hope that this book will give people not only permission to be themselves, but a guide to do that. And in the book, I lay out this framework of reconnecting with your emotions, restoring your body, reframing your beliefs, renewing your spirit, and once you've done those things, reinventing your routines to make them stick. But I do firmly believe that I could have been a truer version of myself earlier if I wasn't so concerned about um, acquiring status and playing the rules of the corporate arena. Now, don't get me wrong, like playing those rules had some benefits. It certainly,
Sure.
I certainly acquired some things, and that allows me to live a comfortable life now. However, I sacrificed so much, and when I wrote about this in the book, suppressing so much of yourself shows up in your body. It shows up in your spirit, or
Mm.
it dampens who you are. And so, I do want people to know that, you know, anytime you're being yourself, it, it's not necessarily easy depending on the circumstance, but it's worthwhile. If you can get more comfortable with following your natural instincts, following your values. And sometimes that may mean you need to move into a different environment. Because there certainly are places that are toxic that don't allow you to be who you are. That's a signal that you may need to pick up your things and move to another environment where you can be the fullest version of yourself that makes you happy and more fulfilled in life.
Really well said. And I love we, me, I have a tendency to try and separate all these things into my neat little buckets, and this is where that goes, and this is where this goes, and this is da 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 da. And that's fine and well, but it's also flawed because all these things are interacting. So my spirit, my body, my mind, my career, all these things are touching one another. And to try to segment them off and to it's do that at your own peril.
Yeah, I was the queen of compartmentalizing. Like I would just, you could have a disaster happening. I'd be like in crisis at home, but would go to work and no one would know anything was happening. No one would be, the wiser. And I would suffer in silence so much because I wanted to appear that I had it all together and had the answers. And I didn't want anyone to perceive me as being too emotional or not as competent or whatever the thing. But I did suffer at my own peril. To your point, I just developed a lot of stress related illnesses because I was suppressing so much. And so now this book is actually the culmination of me learning to put it out there, and I struggled. It was a decision point for me, right? I went through a lot. I could have not put it out to the world, but I found that it could be much more powerful to strip back the layers, to show other people, and again, give people permission to be a more fuller, real, human, whole version of themselves.
Love it. Well, Regina, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story and what you've learned, which will help so many other people to get closer to leading whatever their version of a meaningful life is. So, where can people learn more? Where can they get their copy of Do You, A Journey of Success, Loss, and Learning to Live a More Meaningful Life?
Yes. Well, people can grab their copy on Amazon, also barnesandnobles.com, and hopefully in a book retailer near you. We're trying to push the book out to as many local retailers as possible. But also check me out on my website, reginalawless.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn at Regina Lawless or on Instagram at regina.lawless.
I was going to ask if you're on Instagram after having worked at Instagram. So,
Yes, yes. I have no secrets to the algorithm. I'm
right.
struggling on there like the rest of y'all. but I am there.
That's awesome. If you enjoyed this as much as I did, show Regina your appreciation and share today's show with a friend who also appreciates good ideas. Pick up your copy of Do You? Journey of Success, Loss, and Learning to Live a More Meaningful Life at Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, hopefully your local bookstore, and then go to reginalawless.com. Find her on LinkedIn as well as Instagram, and I'll certainly link all those in the notes of the show. Thanks again, Regina.
Thanks, George.
Until next time, remember, do your part by doing your best.